So let's talk about Tesla numbers here, okay? Now, first thing I thought was interesting, I saw this on CNBC, they had Rivian right next to Tesla, okay? Now, look at the category they put Rivian in. They put it in the autos category, and look at the category they put Tesla in. They put it in the tech category. I thought that was really interesting, right? Real quick here with Rivian, and before we get to Tesla, this is a perfect situation of trying to get too cute in the market. So, Rivian has been talked about a lot over the past month or so, and the reason being is everybody's kind of wanting to pile into that one because it's like, oh, interest rates could be going down. It's going to benefit Rivian more. Rivian stock could move higher. And then the stock, you get a 10% pie in the face today, right? 10% down that stock is. Yeah, stick with what works. I like Rivian. I have exposure of that through that stock through Amazon, right? Because Amazon owns a ton of Rivian stock. But with that being said, like Rivian, we don't know if they're going to get profitable, when they'll be profitable. We don't even know if they're ever going to be able to scale the big numbers, right? There's just a little guy. Stick with what works. Like in this industry, like, if you want to play an EV, you got to continue to play Tesla. Rivian, I understand people want to play it as a trading mechanism, but, if you want to play it like that, you can, and then you get 10% down in a day, right? That's just what happens there, right? So in regards to Tesla, Q3 deliveries came in at 484,000. Total production came in at 494,000. Total annual deliveries ended up coming in at over 1.8 million, and total annual production came in at about 1.84 million overall for the company, okay? So how do I feel about the numbers? I will say I'm happy. I'm happy with the numbers. Obviously, not the best demand environment last year for the company with interest rates being so high. Literally, if you look at the beginning of 2022 through the end of 23, literally auto loan rates shot to the moon. It's insane. And so in that environment, to still be growing at the clips Tesla's growing at in terms of deliveries and production, as a Tesla shareholder, I couldn't be happier. In 2022, the Elon Musk-led automaker reported annual deliveries of 1.31 million and production of 1.37 million electric vehicles. The new numbers represent deliveries growth of 38% year over year and production growth of 35% year over year. In 2022, the company reported 40% year over year growth in deliveries. So it's incredible that they, let's just call it, nearly grew just as fast, even with a very bad interest rate environment and even with a consumer that was much more damaged in 23 than 22 because they had been through 2 years of inflation rather than just 1 year of inflation. In its last earnings call in October 2023, Tesla executives offered guidance that the company would notch at least 1.8 million deliveries for the full year, a number that had revised down from a 2 million goal earlier. Analysts had expected Tesla to report deliveries of 477,000, so Tesla beat there. According to consensus estimates compiled by Street Account as of December 28th, deliveries are the closest approximation of sales by Tesla, but are not precisely defined in the company's shareholder communications. Now, here's where things are going to get interesting, right? Is you have a lot of weird stuff going on with Tesla. For instance, I saw this here today. This is weird. You can now buy a Tesla Model 3 Performance for less than a long-range all-wheel drive. And the reason something like this happens is due to the tax credit situation, okay? And some models selling really well, and so they don't get the full 7,500 versus other models do. And so that's a weird dynamic. So you're going to have a lot of weird dynamics here because I was just looking at this and I'm like, man, if I was interested in a Model 3, dang, it's a good time to get a performance Model 3. The fact that you can get that for less at a long range, that's pretty attractive. Cybertruck is, this could be the difference between beating numbers and missing numbers throughout 2024. Depending upon how fast the ramp happens for Cybertruck. Because you got to understand, the difference between Tesla missing, let's call it production numbers, and missing or beating production numbers is usually around 10,000 units. Cybertruck could be the difference between them beating quarterly estimates or missing quarterly estimates for the entire year of 2024. Because, the numbers are usually so close between Tesla meeting or missing those numbers. It's incredible, right? Now, in terms of 2024 for Tesla overall, first half of the year, it's all about Cybertruck ramp. I think that's where full focus is. I think that's what the conference call is going to be focused on, how Cybertruck ramping. That's where focus is going to be at. Second half of the year, I think it's different. I think second half of the year, we're really going to talk a lot more about margins. I'm expecting margins to start to uptick in the second half of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if, let's call it 3 and Y start to get some actual price increases as the year goes along. I think they'll bring back some potentially, like, you know, if you want certain colors, they might be more expensive and things like that. So I'm looking at that, and I'm actually expecting margins to potentially uptick in the second half of the year. Only bad thing I really have to say about Tesla here recently is they did have to make some changes to autopilot and full self-driving here recently, okay? Now, I've experienced this, and other Tesla drivers have experienced this. You got to pretty much keep your hand on the wheel the whole time, even when you have autopilot engaged now. Now, you know, one of the beautiful things about autopilot, full self-driving, whatever you want to call it, before was you didn't really have to keep your hand on the wheel. You could, like, every once in a while, you have to, like, touch the steering wheel or change the volume up and down in the vehicle or something like that. But now you actually have to keep your hand on the wheel. So, you know, it's not as convenient as it used to be. But the government made them do that, so it is what it is now at this point in time. So, anyways, I don't know how that's going to affect full self-driving sales or anything like that. I think that just has to play out. But I have had a few people complain to me about the new changes that Tesla had go through in the last 2 weeks. So a little food for thought in regards to that. Alrighty guys, let's get into these videos here. 2024 will be another year of growth and drama for Tesla.
Asking for a Tesla recall following a Reuters investigation that alleged Tesla used a number of faulty parts it knew were defective. Tesla issuing a long response on X, rebuffing the claims. The stock has had a banner year in 2023, more than doubling. Can that hot streak continue as the headlines pile up and Elon Musk continues to be preoccupied with X? Former Ford CEO and interim Hertz CEO Mark Fields joins now with his outlook for Tesla in 2024. I just want to read you part of this statement from Tesla because,
you know, just to dial this back one last time, the problem with these losses is, keep in mind the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ and the Dow are all near all-time highs. All-time highs. Folks, if your portfolio looks like this when the market's at near all-time highs, don't do stocks anymore. Don't do stocks anymore, okay? Don't do it. Holy smokers, that's no jokers.
They acknowledge the article, say they published an article that leads with wildly misleading headline, is riddled with incomplete and demonstrably incorrect information. And then they go through point by point what they see as wrong. For instance, blaming the drivers for failures, the reality Tesla paid for most of the 120,000 vehicle repairs under warranty, et cetera, et cetera. Does this seem like it presents a big risk for Tesla?
Well, Sarah, you know, every car company has their issues on quality around vehicles. I think the interesting thing about this is they do note that they've repaired about 120,000 vehicles. That's a large percentage for the number of vehicles that they have in their, what they call the car park, all the vehicles that they have out there in the marketplace. That's the thing that sticks out. When you have that large of a percentage, you know, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. And listen, as you know, Sarah, in the article, Tesla does not have a communications department. So, you know, trying to kind of work with the writers to kind of clarify things.
Tesla doesn't have a communications department? Hold your horses for just a moment, sir. Have you ever heard of a gentleman named Elon Musk? That's all the communications department we need. It's just Elon, okay?
I'm out with. That's not Tesla's MO. So, you know, this is part of the ramifications of that.
I was wondering if this came from Elon Musk himself. I'm not sure who's running communications there. As far as the stock performance, I mean, Mark, there's a lot of optimism around delivery numbers, which we should get next year. What's your sense of demand? It was a year that we expected demand to fall off, and it did a little bit for EVs, but not so much for Teslas, especially with the price cuts.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sarah. I mean, beginning of last year, Tesla got very aggressive with price cuts. It depressed their margins, but it did increase their volumes. And I think that's partly reflected in their stock performance this year. I also think when you see some of the established automakers like GM and Ford and others who have, you know, recently announced that they're pulling back on some of their aggressive EV investments, that's also helped the stock. And I think as you look at 2024, I think it's going to be another year of growth and drama for the company. Probably less so on growth in 2024 because there's no new high volume products. And who knows on the drama? That'll be either more or less depending upon Elon and how he go about things.
Elon. Okay, wait a minute. No high volume products? No new high volume products? Sir, in all due respect. Cybertruck's going to be an extremely high volume product. It really is going to come down to how fast can Tesla ramp that truck. but the demand is there. Like if Tesla could produce 200,000 Cybertrucks next year, they would sell every single Cybertruck, no problem. If Tesla could make 400,000 Cybertrucks next year, they would sell 400,000 Cybertrucks next year. That is going to be a high volume product. I can tell you that much. With how many people are on the waiting list for Cybertruck, how many people want that? That's a very high volume product. It's just, obviously it's going to take a while to ramp that baby up to, let's call it, really start rolling. Okay, next one up here. Gordon Johnson. Teslas are unreliable, unsafe. Ooh, okay, Gordon Johnson.
Dominate the American EV market.
By the way, if there's anybody watching us right now, you don't know Gordon Johnson. He's a man that's been very bearish on Tesla over the years. And it's been quite interesting to see it play out. And when I say years, I'm talking like at least 5+ years. This man has been bearish on Tesla and has negative things to say about Tesla all the time.
Let's take it to our panel tonight. We're joined by Gerber Kawasaki President and CEO Ross Gerber and GLG Research CEO and founder Gordon Johnson. I actually think, guys, that you don't agree on much, but I have a feeling that you should, I think, Ross, agree with Gordon on this, that BYD, whatever you may think of them in their Dolphin or Yuan Plus cars, is a threat if they come here.
Hilarious.
Well, I don't look at it as a threat per se. I think BYD is an enormously successful company and probably one of the best companies in China across the board. But it doesn't make it a threat to Tesla in that 90% or more of the people still are buying gas cars. I think the biggest threat that BYD and Tesla face is to the Fords, BMWs, the Volkswagens of the world. So I look at them as very complementary companies. They're very similar in a lot of ways, and they're both excellent companies.
Gordon, would you agree?
No, I disagree. Look, BYD
I was wrong again.
BYD is cutting prices significantly in China. Look, in last quarter, third quarter, where Tesla's sales were actually down sequentially. I'm going to look at my notes here. Their market share in China fell nearly 220 basis points from 2Q to 3Q. And from peak in China, when their market share was 27% in 1Q of 20, it's down to 8.6%. Their market share has collapsed. But here's why. Let's focus specifically on why Tesla's market share is falling. If you look at Consumer Reports, what car, J.D. Power, they rank Tesla last or near last in quality. Edmunds ranks Tesla as the only.
Is that what people in China read? Do people in China read this?
Of course, but hear me out. Edmunds ranks Tesla as the only company whose EPA stated range, its actual real world range for every single car is lower than its EPA stated range. So you're not getting the range. And then just the other day, there was a study that came out from LendingTree that stated Tesla's cars are the least safest out of all 30 cars they tested.
They're about to have a record in China.
That's just not factual. Like what? Like Tesla cars? Are you kidding me? Look at the safety tests for Tesla cars. Like, are you kidding me? Like, they always outperform basically everybody in almost all the crash tests. Like, what?
3.54 accidents per 1,000 cars.
This is Tesla's best quarter ever in China.
Yeah. The point is this. Tesla's cars are unreliable, unsafe, and don't have the mileage. We've been saying this for a long time. And what's happening is the consumer, right? The consumer is moving away from Tesla. One last point. Just today, we found...
As somebody who's been driving Teslas for years, I've never found them unreliable, I can tell you that. Once again, the safety tests, you can look up the safety tests in regards to Tesla. Like, they almost always perform better than pretty much any vehicle out there when it comes to crash tests. And then as far as the mileage go, listen, this is the same thing like, a car gets 30 miles to the gallon, right? Well, you got to drive it perfect to get the 30 miles to the gallon. Same thing with Tesla. If you drive it perfect, you can get the mileage, right? But people don't drive perfect. They hit the gas way too hard and they accelerate and they go too fast. They don't go the ideal speed and all those sorts of things. So, like, under ideal driving conditions, sure, it can get that mileage. But, it cracks me up, man. Gordon Johnson, I don't think there's ever going to be a day where he's not negative on Tesla.
Tesla.
Oh, did I tell you guys about the guy I met recently here in Vegas? This was probably like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Met a guy here in Vegas. He drives from Canada to Vegas all the time, and he's got a 2014 Model S. He told me he's got over 200,000 miles on that baby, which I've never met anybody that has a Tesla that has over 200,000 miles, only over 100,000. So he's one of the few. And he says he's never had any major issues with the car ever, with over 200,000 miles on that car. I was very happy and pleased to hear that as somebody that's been driving Tesla since, when did I get my first Tesla? I think it was 2019. So I was like, heck yeah, that's awesome, man.
A number of axle failures, right? Suspension failures they knew about. Right,
but Gordon, we're going a little bit off the rails here, Gordon. I just want to say that's what you said is true.
Gordon always goes off the rails.
GM just stopped selling its Blazer EV. Toyota had a massive recall because of further airbag issues. Every car company has recalls, don't come at me, Teslarians.
Yeah, and the difference is Tesla just does an over-the-air update that you download and it's done, versus these other guys got to take it in the shop. It's super inconvenient, super costly.
Or over-the-air software updates, whatever you want to call them. Every car, Gordon, has a problem. Everybody.
Well, Sally, you got to take a step
and you're
back.
missing the overall point, which is this is not stopping people from buying Teslas as they have a record.
Okay, hold on, Ross. Right? Let Gordon respond to my pseudo rant, and then you
Sally,
can.
I want to address that head on. Other companies do recalls. Tesla did not do a recall. There was a whistleblower who was an employee at Tesla who basically turned over a bunch of information to Handelsblatt, who now Reuters now has that data, that basically stated that Tesla knew its cars had faulty suspensions and they didn't do a recall. And then Tesla's response to that was, we fixed 120,000 suspensions. The reason why that's eye-opening is because there's other cars out there, millions potentially of cars in the United States where they haven't fixed the suspension or done a recall. Okay. That is a huge problem. That's putting all of us at risk.
This is like if they're watching, I love it's like my Christmas, it's family dinner at Christmas, okay? We started on one thing and sort of went over here. I want to bring it back a little bit, Ross. What I want to talk about, and it's a good discussion, by the way, but I want to talk about BYD. Let me ask you a direct question, because we don't know what the labor conditions are in BYD. We don't know. The Chinese government can subsidize them. Should BYD cars even be allowed ever into the U.S. market?
Well, absolutely. I'm a capitalist. I don't think we should.
But they're
close
not.
the market.
But China's not.
Yeah, I know. But that's their, government and their choice. America doesn't change capitalism just because we don't like a certain group of people, right? So, Chinese should be able to sell cars here just like everybody else.
I don't think it's liking them. I think what I worry about is we covered the UAW strike extensively, right? These are hardworking people in Detroit just trying to make a living, like the middle class dream. BYD could be paying people $5 an hour to make a car. We could never compete with that, Ross.
Right. And I think that's the government's job to set tariffs and policies for trade.
Exactly. Or, very simply, you want to sell BYDs in America, build them in America. That's not complicated at all, right?
Not really we should just decide consumers also actually make this decision of whether they want to buy a Chinese car. And I think that's the biggest factor that BYD faces, that American consumers don't want a Chinese car. So if you see what Geely did by buying Volvo and using the Volvo brand, even though it's a Chinese company, that's, I think, a much smarter strategy to breaking into Europe and the United States market. So I think the biggest risk BYD has is the fact that Americans just won't buy Chinese cars. But keeping them out of the market isn't really, capitalism.
I do worry, though, Gordon. Listen, I think we said the same thing about...
Yeah, I'd be thrilled to have BYD come to America as long as they build the cars in America as well, right? And the reason being is I think it's an actual serious EV maker, and we can build the EV market faster with a company like BYD here, right? And what's a company like BYD going to do? They're going to ultimately partner with Tesla as far as the supercharging network goes, which would obviously expand Tesla's opportunity there. But a lot of these traditional automakers just are not getting anybody excited about EVs. They're just not doing it, right? BYD at least would have a chance.
Japanese cars in the late 60s, no one's going to buy them. They're small and cheap looking. I think we said the same thing about Korean cars, Kia and Hyundai in the late 80s and early 90s. We're still saying that about French cars, and that's okay because it's accurate. But you get my point, Gordon, which I wouldn't underestimate China. Do you think they should be allowed in the U.S. market?
Absolutely not. And let me tell you why. Ross kind of is not focused on the specifics here. China has three key subsidies. Cheap labor. They use slave labor to manufacture a lot of their products. Artificially low, basically borrowing costs for their banks, and artificially low energy prices. That is not fair. That's not a level playing field. That's not capitalism. So to allow those cars in here and them to undercut the American automakers, thus killing jobs here, creating jobs over in China, I think is unfair. And Ross knows this, right?
But we're subsidizing EVs here in the United States.
They're taking subsidies away from even Tesla because they're making a lot of their batteries, some of their batteries in China and shipping those cars over here. So you got to level the playing field. You can't have guys using slave labor to make their cars and then shipping them into America where we have to pay competitive wages. That's not fair. That's not capitalism.
100%. That's why, once again, BYD wants to sell cars in America. It's fine. Build them in America. Don't ship them in, right? All right, guys, much love as always, and have a great day.